conversational glam is sure to follow, which means that.
Good afternoon, everyone. To the special class, especially today, we have some of the most successful, knowledgeable people in the fashion business who are here to help you, called Fashion Service Network. And they're very important to us because each one brings a big amount of knowledge and connections for you to get jobs in the future, because I thought this would be an important class for all of you. The opening subject of Fashion Service Network will give many avenues to all of you to network. Our panel will give students practical advice, strategies for employment entering the fashion industry, because it's not an easy industry you're entering into today, in today's world. And the panel will also address students and recent graduates who are considering a new FIT entrepreneurial program, startup challenges, et cetera. I don't want to waste time talking too much because there are 4 brilliant men here waiting to pass on knowledge that's very important to you. Michael Stanley of Rosenthal and Rosenthal is the panel moderator. He will take the podium once I get away from here. No, I want you to do it. No, please, because you know the background of all the men and you will do justice to their presence here. And Andrew Jassin of Jassin Consulting Group, and Tom Nastos, ENK International Trade Events, and Steve Defontes, Big Idea Advertising, and Stuart Kagel is here. 24? Okay. And that's enough out of me. I want to give the panel over to our moderator, our wonderful Michael Stanley. Please rescue me, Michael. Thank you.
I have to move it up. Thank you, Alice. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And I don't think you had a choice, but thank you for coming anyhow. Alice, you did a very nice job in introducing our esteemed panel here. And, my usual question would be, tell us who you are, what you do, and who you do it for. And I'm going to start out with Steve Defontes.
Okay. My name is Stephen Defontes. I own Big Idea Advertising. It's an advertising and marketing firm in Union Square. We produce communications for all types of companies, really, from branding and logo development all the way through print ads, brochures, website development, e-commerce site development. So a pretty wide range of media communications. Some of our clients include brands that you might know, like The Art of Shaving or Hale and Hearty Soups here in Manhattan.
And so you help them with advertising. Steve, tell us a little bit more.
Sure.
What do you do for them?
Well, we're primarily a consultancy on the creative development side. So we'll come in and help them determine what a marketing strategy should be, how can they reach the consumers that they're looking to reach, and how can they influence those people to buy their products.
I'm just curious, because we know each other and all, but how did you get that job? How did you have found the company? Tell us about your career.
I started the company at 26. I had worked at a boutique ad agency for about 4 years before I left and went out on my own. And it kind of happened very naturally for me. I really started freelancing, basically just going directly to clients with my portfolio, and sort of very quickly traded up from rather small retail clients to larger brands. And that just kind of naturally grew into hiring employees, finding an office space, and really developed into the company that we have today.
Good. Great. Terrific. Stuart, you're on.
Hi, I'm Stuart Kagel. The name of my company is 24/7. We're global talent resource for international brands. We provide the creative talent that influences product from all the way from concept to commercialization. I have to cheat and read these to you. In the fashion space, some of our clients are Hanes, L'Oreal, Victoria's Secret, David Yurman, Jones, Chico's down in Florida, Gap, Banana, Old Navy, Polo, I can't read my own writing, Tory Burch, Donna Karan, Kenneth Cole, Marc Jacobs. We do business with about 565 fashion clients.
Terrific. Tom, Nastos.
Hi, my name is Tom Nastos. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Primarily, I do three different things. First, I founded a company in 1990, Endurance LLC. It was initially a private label manufacturing company, but it morphed into a private label / branding licensing company as it progressed over the years. We've been involved in manufactured and distributed brands such as Rockaware in the hip-hop world, or Echo in the young men's, Pro-Keds in the sneaker business, Joseph Abboud in the traditional men's. Paper Denim and Cloth was one of our brands in the premium denim, and we just launched another premium denim brand by the name of Resin. So that's one part of the career. I started that in 1990. The other company that I run is E&K, Trade Show Events, E&K International. E&K is a company that I served on the board of directors for a number of years. It's the largest trade show company in the United States for fashion trade shows, high-end fashion trade shows. We operate over 29 trade shows in the United States, the largest one being here in New York. If you see at the Javits Center, there's the pier called the Coterie. We have trade shows in men's, women's, children's, accessories, footwear, so just about every category in the fashion business. And then the third thing I do is I teach at the graduate school here at FIT, supply chain management, and I'm looking for a job on Sundays. So.
Andy, can you beat
Yeah.
Andy? You can't beat, he works much harder than all of you guys put together, let's face it.
Stuart's going to get me the job.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here. Thank FIT for allowing us to talk, and Professor Papazian. My background's a little bit different. I started in the apparel industry as a salesman a long, long time ago after going to graduate school, thinking that the apparel industry would be a very easy thing to make my chops with. And shortly thereafter, I learned that selling is just a function of working with design, production, distribution. And I quickly learned I better learn a lot about the business, and that's what I've done for the last, I guess, 40 years in the apparel industry. I was the president of Jones Apparel Group and the president of a company called Biederman Industries. Biederman was the holder of licenses for Paul Smith, Ralph Lauren Womenswear, part of Giorgio Armani. We were partners with Yves Saint Laurent, and we owned Karl Lagerfeld's business. My business is connecting the dots. My colleagues and I work with large and small design groups in apparel, footwear, jewelry, and other fashion products to include home furnishings and food. Our job is primarily to look at ideas, to look at where they might work in the retail world or in the wholesale world, and try to make sense out of design, corporate finance, and logistics. And the one thread that you'll hear this afternoon into this evening is connecting the dots. Connectivity is about communication. Primary part of doing anything in fashion is to get your idea into someone else's backyard, their pocket, or in their wardrobe. My firm helps manage the ideas, connecting the dots. Along the way, we've done a lot of licensing work. We represent several of the large branding companies around the world which have wonderful products. And again, brands only work if they have products. We represent Paul Smith. We do all of Calvin Klein's licensing. We represent Joseph Abboud. We represent Rag & Bone. We work with companies that are a little bit more contemporary, like Catherine Malandrino, Jill Stewart, and Annette Lepore. But it's all about product and connecting the dots.
Good. So, you know, as I think Alice pointed out, we're all members of this group called Fashion Services Network, and we have one of our other members here, Andrew Rotunda. Andrew runs a logistics company called Dynamic Worldwide. Is that, I called it international before. And Andrew provides all the logistics, you know, the movement of the product back and forth for a lot of importers and vendors, and also for a couple of very large retailers, Macy's being one. And the other thing that I'm very proud of Andrew for is that he has these trucks. They're green trucks. They're electric trucks. And it's really great, right? I want to borrow one because I have to move one of the kids over the weekend, but they're terrific. I run a company called Rosenthal and Rosenthal. And what Rosenthal does is we provide the financing for largely, our client's base is largely apparel and textiles, and some jewelry and footwear. And we provide the financing for them. And our clients include a Steve Madden, a Diane von Furstenberg, a Seven Jeans, you know, and the like. So going back to our esteemed panel, give us, Steve, one of your top career mistakes. I mean, it doesn't sound like you've made that many so far, because it sounds like you're doing amazing. But if you had to make a mistake, what was your biggest mistake?
You really have to be careful who you work with when you're running your own company. Oh, sorry. And there's certain vendors that I've worked with over the years that I think I wish I had considered a little bit more how important they were going to be to the future of my business. I think I was running it sort of, like I said, it grew very naturally, but to know that you're working with lawyers or accountants who are good at what they do and setting you up for a future in which you're safe and secure is very important. And I think in the beginning you sort of work with whoever you can afford to work with, and those kinds of vendors and relationships are really important to running a business, and especially a creative business. You tend to worry about the work a lot. You worry about the quality of the creative product that you're putting out, and you don't necessarily focus on the financial aspects of the business, the legal aspects of the business, and those are equally or more important than the quality of the work that you're putting out. So I definitely wish I had considered those areas a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Andy, did you ever make a mistake in life, Andy?
Couple. I think everyone in the fashion business has made a mistake or two. I think the most important mistakes that I've made is not paying attention to competition, thinking that what I was building and whatever mousetraps we had would be able to sustain themselves, not looking over my shoulder what competition does. And one of the cardinal lessons in talking about building your product or building your brand is that unless you have competition and know what they do, you'll never succeed, or you'll succeed for a period of time and quickly be taken over or overtaken. So if a mistake was made, it's called hubris, that false pride, thinking what you do is better and will consistently keep going.
Mm-hmm. Stuart.
I think the biggest mistake I made when we started 24/7 was not taking advantage of the information that was available. In other words, having opinions about subjects when it took us about 6 months to realize that in Steve's world, we were introduced to something called a focus group. We had never really asked questions of respective groups, like candidates, graduates like yourselves, hiring managers, the people who actually put people to work, the human resources department, and we started conducting focus groups when we were about 6 months old, asking questions of the group rather than walking around with an opinion. And I had lots of opinions, most of which were proved completely wrong because we weren't asking the questions. Once we started asking the questions, we started getting real information, which was actionable. And when it started, I'll give you a brief example. When we first conducted candidate interviews, I was convinced that the candidate universe wanted a 401k program and health insurance. And the very first candidate focus group that we had, we found out that what the candidates really wanted to do was be trained on technology they couldn't get access to. That was the most important thing in their world. How do I get training on technologies that are emerging that, unless I work for the company that uses them, I can't have access to it? And simultaneously, the hiring managers wanted trained people. So what it taught us was, if we started training candidates on technology that the hiring managers wanted the candidates to have, the candidates could hit the ground running, and they could get what they wanted. Well, that's a long way from a 401k and a health care plan. And we started training when we were 6 months old as a company. And we probably would have stumbled into that eventually, but asking the question was a very formidable change in the way we gathered information and reacted in the marketplace. And we do that today virtually every month.
Tom?
I'll just keep it brief, but the organizations and ourselves, we make mistakes. I don't want to say on a daily basis, but we do. We make mistakes continuously, and I think it's important for us to recognize whether they're individual mistakes or corporate mistakes. But I think that for us, the biggest lost opportunity that I see, whether it was a mistake or lost opportunity, was that we were in a position, I would say 20 years ago, or even maybe 25 years ago, at the right time, at the right place in Asia. And even though we did well, we didn't maximize, we didn't have the foresight to see exactly where certain things are going to go. I mean, it's easy to look back on, but at the time we had to make certain decisions, and the decisions that we made were very U.S. branded centric, on what was going around me that I was familiar with, as opposed to where the potential was, growth was going. So that, I would see that when I look back as a mistake.
Yeah. I'm going to ask myself that same question, and the answer is, Alice, as you know, I've never made a mistake so far. But this is a true story. Well, I don't go that far, but my founder made a mistake, and this is a true story. Imre Rosenthal, many, many years ago, a guy from the Bronx came in to see him, and he was working at Brooks Brothers, but he developed his own line of ties. And Imre said, he looked at the business plan and whatever else, and his last name was a little strange. His last name was Lipschitz, right? And he thought about it. He says, "Listen," he says, "I think your ties are okay, but the name has got to go." And he says, "I'm not interested," and he left. Thereafter, the guy, the story. He changed his name to Lauren, and it was a huge opportunity. He missed it. So, but I learned from that mistake. Okay. Andy wants to say something.
One thing that's important, first of all, loosen up, everybody. This is not formal. How many of you guys are seniors? And how many of you have jobs, number one, or have been on interviews? Not a lot.
Not a lot.
Couple of things, and Mike asked a good question. First of all, we all make mistakes, but remember, mistakes are not fatal. In fashion, we all make mistakes all the time. And the objective of a good education is to teach us to cure those mistakes and learn more as we go forward. And I think everything we see in business starts with a mistake that we fix and get better doing. And you just came through sort of basic training. And basic training is like a military term, and the next step is sort of boot camp, and then comes reality. And you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but don't harp on them. Take the next steps and go forward all the time.
Do you think you should beat yourself up over the mistakes, Andy?
No way. I mean, again, if done intelligently, your career path and what you do for work, those mistakes are going to happen. Just go on from them. Take the next step forward. Don't fall into a rut. You know, we're all people, and we all fall into ruts every now and then. And be your own psychologist or psychiatrist, or person next to you can help you get out of that rut.
To Andy's point, I think it's okay to look at your mistakes, just don't stare at them.
I agree. Let's talk about getting a job. It's tough, right? Steve, how do these guys get a job? Tell them.
I get to look at a lot of resumes from, in my case, it's usually graphic designers, not fashion designers, although I've had a lot of designers who are also fashion designers or have gone on to become fashion designers. But don't get discouraged by the fact that everyone says what a tough time it is to get a job for starters. They told me the same thing when I graduated, and it's always going to be tough for people coming out of school to get a job. So you have to ignore that. Don't get bogged down in that thought process from the very beginning. Standing out from the crowd is really important. You want to stand out in a good way, so you want your resume to look as good as it can look. You want your portfolio to look as good as it possibly can look. The expectations of employers are that students coming out of school will have portfolios that look just as good or better than designers who have 2-3 years experience. So you need to compete with the rest of the people who we would consider juniors that are out there. And we have an expectation that you're going to be more technically savvy, that you're going to be aware of what's out there already, and your portfolio is going to look just as good. I also think that it's really important to not just look at who's looking for help. Don't just answer want ads. Look for companies that you want to work for and try and see how you can approach that company and get a job there.
On the resume, you know, everybody builds a resume, and, you know, how honest should you really be with a resume, Andy? Andy, you're...
Don't lie.
Don't lie 100%.
First of all, you're all young, compared to us at least. Your resume is really a personal statement about who you are, and more importantly, it should be something directed at who you want to read that resume. No one expects you to have had a career working for Ralph Lauren or Bloomingdale's or Bergdorf Goodman. But the fact that you've been educated and you've grown up in a society looking at e-commerce, social media, that's part of your resume. It's a matter of incorporating that into a presentation to somebody.
Yeah.
But don't lie about something that you didn't do or couldn't have done, because it's very easy to see through those lies, especially
It is.
when you get to meet
But
somebody.
Stuart, you read a lot of resumes. How do you make your resume like stand out? How do you make it jump so they're going to say, you know what, I have to see that person?
Well, first of all, don't misspell anything. The first way to lose an audience is to have a typo or a spelling error. So that's the first rule, is to make sure that the resume is clean. Then look at who you're targeting your resume toward. It's okay to have different versions of your resume for different audiences. It makes just common sense. Look at who the potential interview is, recognizing network. But once you get to the point where you're writing your resume targeted at an interview or a specific company, it's common sense. Get into the store, look at the merchandise, get on the internet, research what they're doing, find out if there's an acquisition or a trend within the company, and at least have your resume targeted so that you can, when asked to explain your resume or talking about your business experiences, you can sort of target it toward the specific company with whom you're interviewing. And go to 247talent.com and get a book. I said get, don't buy. It's free. The name of the book, How to Get a Job in Fashion. Download it and read it. 247talent.com, How to Get a Job in Fashion.
And it's on your site, right?
Pardon?
It's on your website.
It's on the website.
Yeah.
Just download it. It's
All right.
free,
For free.
and
Good.
it's helpful.
Yeah. Tom, you interview a lot of people as well.
Right.
How quickly do you make, you've seen the resume, so, you know, and so now it's the interview process, right? So you meet this prospective employee. How long does it take you to decide whether or not to hire that individual? How long does it take?
I can tell you the process that I go through.
Sure.
Briefly.
Tell
when I
us.
do that. Number one, Stuart's absolutely correct. Do not have any spelling mistakes on your resume, because we all look at that very carefully. Sounds small, but I generally toss the resumes. If you don't care for your resume, then I won't care for it. So that's number one. Number two, from at least my perspective, be 100% honest and truthful on your resume, because I check. I check references, and then depending on the job, I use security companies to check even further on the truthfulness of exactly. So we follow up. If you do have a job and you were working from 2004 to 2006 at a particular place, we will check on that. Okay. And then when I get to the actual interview itself, okay, generally what I do is I usually have some of associates in our company do interviews. So we may have the chief financial officer or the head of the department do the interview, and then those notes are forwarded to me, and then I do the interview also. So for us, it might be a 2 or 3 individual process. As far as interviews. And the reason I emphasize that is that at the end, and I think everybody here will agree, we're in a people business, and all of our associates are critical to us to be successful. So I need to ensure that we make the right choice, because if I make a bad choice, it sets me back a year. Okay, whether it's in product development or whether it's at the trade shows or so forth. So these decisions are actually critical to the organization at every level. Okay, and we want to ensure that we have people that are aggressive, that want to grow with the company, that have all the attributes that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Andy, you also meet a lot of people. Andy, tell us your thoughts.
In the first 90 seconds of a meeting, first minute and a half, an impression is made. And that impression's about what you look like, how kempt you are, your hands, your fingernails, how you address the meeting. Even though some of you are art students or design students, you're interviewing the company that's interviewing you at the same time. It takes a lot of time to undo the first 90 seconds of an error. So part of that is really you walking in with your best foot forward. The other thing that's important is it's very hard to find the right person to address a letter to. Find out who the buyer is in a retail store or who the textile person would be in a design company. Write multiple letters to see if you can get into somebody. It's not that easy to get to the director of human resources in companies today. And again, this is such an early stage of your career, you just want to get your foot in the door, to have that interview, to make that best impression you can make. Interviewing the company that's willing to interview you.
I see everybody, Alice, they're paying attention. This is amazing. So, I can't believe it. They must have had, would you give out Red Bull before they came in? So, if you have a question, you got it. Yes, this young lady right here.
Give her the mic.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Right. What Jamie's question was is that, what type of collateral would we use, Rosenthal, to consider a young emerging designer to take on as a client? Well, we really, you're probably not, it's unlikely that we would take on somebody who's just fresh out of their first line. So, but if you had some level of, or if you were working with another company and you decided to get some capital and then, split over, we would look at it. But the reality is, one of our other colleagues, I'll answer for him, Jeff Kappelman of Hilden, he will take on like what we call a startup. But typically, yes, you have to sign, when you go in to borrow money, yes, you have to pledge the assets of the company, and you also have, which is your primary collateral, but you also have to sign personally for what it's worth. But the things we look at is how much money that the company is starting with, the capital base. Well, you could look at you could try to find private investment. The reality is that, in my just, little myopic suggestion, is that you may have a difficult time starting up on your own. You may want to work in conjunction with, another company that's already in operation. Say, listen, I have this terrific line, and I'd like to work as a division of yours with an understanding, after I hit a certain threshold, I can buy myself out, or you'll let me go, or some exit strategy. And that works in many cases. And you see a huge amount of these deals. What would you suggest?
My colleagues and I meet a lot of startup companies, some with great ideas, some with ideas which I don't even understand, and I've been around a long time. But the one thing that we find, and I have found all my career, is those of you that are the talented design or product people. Who of you are design people? Raise your hands. And how many of you are business people? Have studied business. And in the design group, how many of you can read a balance sheet? Okay, one step is learn how to read a balance sheet. It's a little painful, not that difficult. Every successful designer understands the cost of money and the cost of raw materials and the building of a cost sheet. Every successful designer that I have met, and I'm assuming that my colleagues here also met, who were really talented with great ideas and great personalities, to their right was a business person who took on the responsibility of the drudgery of buying product, of making sure logistics were in order, of dealing with Mike Stanley or the other lenders, or dealing with Stephen in advertising and taking those ideas and bringing them to fruition, or dealing with Tom, who runs the greatest trade shows, or calling Stuart to hire more employees. The team effort of taking great product and design sense married to understanding the business side is critical. And the names of the people that you would identify who've been successful when they had those people are Tommy Hilfiger with Joel Horowitz, and Ralph Lauren with Peter Strom, and Calvin Klein with Barry, and Norma Kamali with her then boyfriend, who's a financial guy, and down the line. The ones that have not been successful are legend. They've had 4, 5, 6 starts, and sometimes they survive. So the person sitting next to you, if it's a business person, try to engage them in talking about what to do. It's very difficult without capital. That's both credit and capital to be in business today. So ideas, concepts need to be married to something that'll lubricate it into a business.
I agree with you, but I don't want to discourage you, because you could be the next Donna Karen, let's face it. So don't get discouraged, and we've always seen these startups. I mean, I'll tell you one that we got involved with just a couple of years ago. She's doing them, is Rebecca Minkoff. And she had very little starting capital. She had this, and she's a young, I don't think she went here, but I don't recall what school she went to. But right now she's at a run rate of about $15 million, doing shoes, doing, what else? She started out making bags, and she was making bags on the west side over here. And all of a sudden, it took off. Then she migrated to China, and now making apparel and shoes, and she won the CFDA. She's like a rock star, this kid now. It's amazing. So, but don't get discouraged. It happens. In fact, I'll tell you very briefly my famous, they know the story, with Steve Madden. When Steve Madden first started in business, he was making shoes in Brooklyn, and they ran out of money, and his 2 partners got in the car, and they got a handful of invoices, and they jumped in the car, and they drove into the city. They figured they would go in the city, give me the invoices, and drive home with money. So when they came in, Steve, he brought the shoes. He put the shoes on my desk, and he says, these shoes, they're blowing out at Bloomingdale's. And I said, that's good, that's good. And here's the invoices, and we need money. I said, okay. I said, what about a financial statement, balance sheet? And Steve said, what's that? He didn't know what the hell I was talking about. It's true. I said, no, you have to have an accountant. So we set him up with an accountant and everything. And here's a story. Alice, it was Andy. Not that I want to get any trouble with him. I told you to shut the phone off. Okay? And he sit in the corner. So it happened. So don't get discouraged. There was another question I noticed over there. No? Oh, yes, there you are.
I used to work for Sotheby's, and whenever someone would say, about reference, we were always told never to give out references and to refer to HR if there was any question. And from what I understood, they would never give a yay or nay that person was a good employee, a bad employee, that it would just confirm that you worked there for that period of time, and that's it. And from what I understood, I think it might have been, in terms of like legal issues that they didn't want to give a yes or no, so is that a normal thing that you would do?
No, because the likelihood is they're going to call up a friend of theirs who works at Sotheby's or Christie's, and they're going to be able to talk candidly, and they're going to say, hello, is this candidate any good? And they're going to say they were fabulous or they were no good. And that's what happened, right or wrong?
Absolutely.
Okay? Yeah, but that's the standard, corporate answer that you got. But it does, yeah, but HR, I'm just telling you pragmatically what happens. Okay? Yeah, that's really what it is. Where was I? Yes. They're going to ask more questions. They're doing great, Alice. They're doing fabulous. They're doing fabulous. The question is, my next question, when the first couple seconds at that interview, when you walk in, Stuart, okay, number one, of course, you want to be on time. What other things do you need to do? What do you say the first couple seconds, Stuart?
Well, the first thing you want to do is be enthusiastic. It's a great opportunity, as Andy alluded, really, in a candidate-rich environment. You're also interviewing the company. And part of that is conveying a confidence in your ability, your work, your ability to describe your work, and an enthusiasm about the business. I think it's critical that, backing up here just a little bit, that you keep in mind that the most important thing in entering the fashion marketplace is to enter it, is to get some background on your resume, some personal experience, so that you can start to build a story about your credentials. And I say that because a lot of hands raised about design, that design is your background. Don't dismiss product development. Don't dismiss sourcing. Recognize that the first thing you need to get is a job. That's absolutely critical. You don't have to take any job, but it's important to get into the marketplace with your skills. Once you have a job, you can migrate infinitely more easily than trying to migrate in a company from the outside looking in.
So, Stuart, what you're saying is that if you love Marc Jacobs and you only wear and you're dying, you want to work for Marc Jacobs, right? Or Neiman Marcus, call it, and you wouldn't even go into a Marshall's or a Ross store. Either you're going to work for Marc Jacobs or you're going to work for Neiman Marcus. How realistic is that, Andy? Is that, and this is your first job?
Well, other than Stephen, perhaps, we've all had a lot of jobs in our lives. And I don't think any of us sitting here or any of the members of our groups or our clients that have been successful are in the same job or the same job description they started with. So, one, you can desire an opportunity for Ralph Lauren or Calvin Klein or Neiman Marcus, and it's wonderful if you can get that, but as Stuart said, get into the job market, take a job, and build your resume, build your career, build your experience, invent yourselves. All of us here in fashion have reinvented ourselves over and over again. And hardly anyone that I know in any aspect of design or business administration or banking are in the position they're in without building that resume. They got a job, they got in the door, they figured out how to work the ropes, as they say, to launch themselves into a career. So first step is get in the door. It's not going to be the first door of choice. You know, oftentimes design people, and whether it be jewelry or home furnishings or textile or apparel, can't get the job they want. They start in sales. Get in the door and learn the process. You know, nothing wrong with being a salesperson. It's a wonderful profession. But it allows you the access to retailers dealing with design, production, and issues like that. So
Yeah.
get in the door.
But Tom, let me ask you, how important is sort of, you know, we're a networking group and everything, but how important is networking for that first interview? Can you use networking for that first interview?
You could absolutely use networking for that first interview. You know, as all these gentlemen mentioned, we are a community. Okay, so as a community, we all look to help each other, just like you know our organization does. So I think networking is a key component. Okay, and then the other part is I think what Andy had just mentioned also, and Stuart had brought it up initially. When you get that opportunity, take advantage of it. You know, a couple of hints. You know, when you come in, you know, Andy said be prepared. I think people that do research on the organization that you're interviewing with, you know, I always love people coming back with feedback. You know, not only what we do right, but you know, I went to your show and it was, you know, the food was terrible, or I thought the lighting wasn't that good, or you know what, the registration line was way too long, and you know, that's feedback that I actually look for. So I think that type of, you know, discussion that, you know, during the interview is a positive. And then the simple thing, which probably your mom always reminds you, send a thank you note, a handwritten one. Okay, that goes a long way. You know, people that generally don't do that, you know, frankly, I kind of disregard. But if people send me a thank you note, say, listen, it was great meeting you and really appreciate it, and I look forward to the opportunity. And if you know need anything else from me, I'm available, as Stu would say, 24/7. You know, then I put that on top of the list and say, wow, you know, that's somebody that's you know, eager to have this position. So.
Yeah. If you have a question, it's okay. There you go, this young lady right there. I'm going to defer. Steve, what do you, Tom, you do want to.
I'll answer that just briefly on like yourself, I'm an FIT alumni. And my first job was on 27th Street and Park Avenue, warehousing. So I would unload the containers right here on 27th Street and Park Avenue. Believe it or not, there was warehouses, you know, when I was going to school here, you know, not that far from here. So I got started in the industry, and you know, 25 years, 30 years later, would I imagine that I'm doing what I'm doing today, from working as a young guy in a warehouse picking and packing and unloading containers? Absolutely not. But I think, you know, one of the things that these panels have said is that you get started in the industry, okay, and you take it step by step. So I don't think you get pigeonholed. I think talent gets recognized. And if you have the talent and the ambition and the desire, okay, this is an industry that I think you could rapidly grow, okay? But I think in this economic circumstance with this group, okay, I think the challenge is getting started. You know, I went from that job to, there was a gentleman, and probably Andy would remember him by the name of Bernie Chaus, who had a young company at the time, and I sat in his lobby 11 straight days, okay, trying to get somebody to talk to me, to the point that he had to come out and say, do you really work here? Okay, I said, no, but I'm trying to get somebody, you know, I really want to work here. He hired me just for the point that I was there for 11 straight days, and I wasn't going to accept the fact that, you know, because he was an up-and-coming company, and I knew that, you know, that was going to be a place for me to get out of the warehouse into something else, so I literally forced the issue. So I think that what you have to basically do is get yourself started. Don't be as concerned with being pigeonholed as opposed to, let me get in, you know, begin that networking process, and then with that networking process, you will create your own opportunities. I think that happens.
I agree. I think, Tom, you're right. If you're in an organization and it may not be the perfect job, other people will see you. And recently, we hired, one of my other department heads, hired this really sharp young man, he was at a graduate school, whatever. And I said, you know, he looks really with it. And I said, Joel, he's not going to work for you so long because, Joel, you're a jackass and he's going to wind up quitting. So I took him. It's true. All these stories, Andrew, I'm telling you, they're true stories. You can write them down. And I took him, and I don't know if you've met him, this Jeff Sesko. He is so sharp, so terrific, such an earnest, you know, hardworking guy. We're promoting him. We're moving him out to California just to help out with our, you know, we have a very growing in California office. So don't worry about just get your foot in the door, because if you have talent and you really love it, somebody will see you and take you. You'll bounce around. It works.
Plus you're building a resume, and the only person who can pigeonhole you is you. The reality is your talent is going to be recognized. You just have to get into a place where it can be recognized.
But be recognized. Carry a pad, take notes, carry an iPad. Carry something that makes people think that you're interested, that you are interested in doing.
And use your head. If you're interviewing at Polo, you don't want to go in with the latest BB creation. You know, you want to use your head. And you're all accomplished, you're all intelligent, you're all engaged in the business.
Steve, on an interview, if you're interviewing for, you know, you know the company you're interviewing, tell us what to wear, how do you dress, and what do we do?
You definitely have to know your audience, but
Okay.
you know, fashion, you guys can be a little bit more liberal, but it never hurts to be more professionally dressed than the person that you're visiting. So if you've got to err on a side, always err on the side of being more formal and more presentable. You want to be taken seriously, especially when you're young and you look young and people know that you're young. You need a way for them to see you as taking their work as seriously as they want it to be taken, and that's certainly one of the biggest ways to show them that you care.
Yes, Andy.
You all have some advantages over graduating students from 5 years ago. You've grown up with the internet, with social media. You've grown up with communications and connectivity, which is different. The retail world changes every Monday morning with new concepts, new techniques of how to talk to consumers, how to sell product. You're expert in that because you live there. That's something that other people may not have. Use that as a tool in talking to people about the new retail, about the new communication, the new trending of how to be able to talk what you are. And that is communicators. Make people believe that you know what it is, of how to bring information forward.
Yeah. Yes. You know, you really get in, Abe, how do you get to be a member? You have to be invited in, more or less, right, Abe? It's like I don't know. How do you, Abe Beta, who's a wonderful human being, and you're terrific. How do you, Abe, answer the question, Abe.
Well, it's an organization for professional people, and it's by invitation of the group. So after you're well established, we hope to see from you and know from you, and it's an organization of service providers, people that help the companies that are out there, infuse them with good ideas and help them grow, and we'll hear from you then.
Is that Karen? I can't see that. I need my sunglasses.
That's Karen.
Karen is one of our new members. We welcome Karen and everything. She's so lovely. Karen, tell us, well, I wouldn't go that far. Karen, tell us what you do, Karen. Karen Brown.
I'm a graduate of FIT. I own a fashion PR agency, and we work with retail accounts, we work with lingerie, all different aspects of fashion, footwear, handbags, accessories. So I sat here in these very seats, and a lot of what you've heard today is true. And I will just add that on the interview part, I think it's really great, as much as you can talk about yourself, your interests, why you think this particular company or job, you'll love it, and you share that passion and communicate that in the interview. It's really important because we all get a ton of resumes. The ones that always stick out to me are the ones that have the most experience in terms of internships and other activities, your special interests, art, dance, theater, those are all important too, especially in our field. So the more that you can add breadth to who you are on that piece of paper until we actually get a chance to meet you, the better for getting in the door.
Thank you, Karen. Yes.
We'll know it when we see it, which is an interesting opportunity to be wrong. Fashion resumes, meaning strange paper or strange italic or strange font, are not what business people really want to see. We want to see something that talks about who you are. As young people, it's about talking about you and what you want to talk to the company about. The fact that you saw the company online, or you stopped in their store, or perhaps you have an idea. Again, you want to get your foot in the door and not do anything that's egregious, that stands out in the wrong way. Clean, bold. We like white paper generally, tan paper if you want. Don't use crazy colored lettering. Even though it sounds fashionable, purple's a great color, but it's not a good color for a letter. It may be different, but that's the first means of someone seeing how you can write also, of how you can put words in order. So make it clean.
I'll just add, resume should be classic to me. If you want to give me your portfolio, it's a portfolio. You want to give me your resume, it's a resume. Don't try to make the resume the portfolio. So it should be classic, should have the information. It should be easy and direct to read. And then if you want to be artistic or show me your work, there's another vehicle for that. So, I'm not an advocate of confusing these different vehicles of what this is. To me, that just creates confusion, as far as what you're looking to accomplish. So.
I'm sorry.
On the resume? I don't, the resume is not that important to me, but I think that when once you're at the level where you're meeting someone, I think it's the first, Andy mentioned, I think it was 90 seconds. I think it's even shorter than that. I think within the first few seconds, the impression, the thing, in my mind, I think you want to get there early, you want to dress like they dress, you want, as soon as you come into the room, you want to have a presence, you want to stand up straight and say, listen, thank you so much for seeing me. And then and it's very nerve-wracking, to go in and you're meeting, a suit or somebody, it's very, very stressful. So you want to try to get over that nervousness. So you want to be able to project yourself and say, this is, you could talk about the company and say, this is what I can do for you. But it's that first, it's like, I kid around, but it's like dating in a way. It's the first couple seconds, if they're for you or not. you know? There was a question, I think, this young lady up here.
I have a question, pretty simple, but since you're talking about first impressions, I just wanted to know, what do you think of someone who walks in that has a lot of tattoos?
I don't know I don't know how to answer that question. I think if tattoos make a difference or not. Steve, what do you think? I don't know if it really means anything to me.
No, I mean, again, it comes down to looking professional in my mind. You know, if your neck's tattooed and it shows a little bit, I mean, as long as the rest of you looks presentable and put together, it comes down to who you are as a person. Do you take the job seriously? I'm gonna dissent a little bit on the idea of what your resume should look like, and that could be because of the industry that I'm in and how important design is to what I'm looking for. But definitely there's a line between what's professional and what's well designed. So getting a beautifully designed resume by mail rather than just an emailed Word document like the 200 or 300 other emailed Word documents I'll get definitely makes an impression. And in fact, I got my first job in a sort of unorthodox way when you talked about leave behinds and visuals. And I don't know if that's just more important to my designers because we like to know that they have a good understanding of marketing and the importance that those marketing communications make. But they can be hard to ignore and certainly can separate you from the crowd.
Yeah. There was yes, that young lady in the top. Well, it's invitation only because it's only for people that are already in business, right? And it's people that, you know, that have a different, there's no overlap with respect to, you know, industry groups. So there's one accounting firm, there's one logistics company, there's one advertiser, there's one, you know, placement company. So that's kind of how we try to contain it and so forth. So that's kind of how it is. Yes. Right. Well, if you had a company, how do, yeah, Andrew.
Service providers, Mike.
One of the purposes of the group is to bring something to the group for its members and for the community. And it's to facilitate knowledge, to facilitate networking, and you have to really be invited into that group. And one of the ways that I was able to join the group was I was invited to a meeting, and then I was invited by some of the members, and then they're voted on to be able to join the group. So that's how it happened.
Yeah, you have to be Andy mentioned, you have to be some sort of a service provider to the fashion industry, whether it's money in, you know, my case, or it's, you know, intelligence in Andy's case, or investment banking. You know, in Tom's case is, you know, the platform for the shows and so forth. So there's somebody, Alice, who are you pointing to who has a question? Oh yes, this gentleman right here. Yeah, yeah.
I'm a graduate science student, and I was wondering if you could speak about the very first important steps to start your own business.
Sure. Like I said, mine wasn't really well planned out, so I would start there. It'd be great if you had a business plan. Mine started, like I said, a little bit more like freelancing, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, and it just sort of developed into a company. So in terms of steps, I mean, I think I knew I wanted to have a business at some point in my career, and I think it happened for me a little bit earlier than I had really planned on it happening. But definitely working somewhere else is an important first step to that. I certainly wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't spent some time working for other people, learning about how the business operated. You certainly save yourself a lot of time from having to reinvent the wheel when you can see how other people have found success. When I started at the firm that I worked at, I was one of a 5-person team. When I left, they were 20. So I watched a small company grow pretty quickly, and I learned a lot from having that experience.
one of the things Stephen said, and I think we all practice this every day and certainly have practiced it most of our lives, write a business plan. May sound a little archaic, but write it in pencil. Write it in something that you can erase and change. And adapt it. Make it a living document as you gain more experience or look at businesses differently or opportunities. Adapt it. But have a plan. You know, and that plan is not going to be the final plan. It'll be a plan that changes to accommodate what's going on in the world around you as well as your experience.
Also, I would strongly encourage you to consider freelancing as well. The opportunities abound on the freelance side of the business as companies try to appropriately staff their organizations. And freelance is a wonderful way to interview a company, to find out what the company's culture is, to also find out if it works for you. And it still appears on your resume. It's work done and performed in the industry that starts to build you as you incorporated, you as the thing or the entity that's trying to move and navigate through the industry. So freelancing is a very, very effective way to gain experience.
We have, how are we doing on time, Alice? We're doing good. Yes, this young lady, yeah.
Well, virtually, the vast majority of resumes that we receive, we offer people freelance opportunities if there isn't a full-time opportunity. So a notation to that effect with a cover note to your resume that you're willing to freelance just reinforces the what's going on in the marketplace.